Hi, Allie Miller from Denver, Colorado. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, good. I wanted to have you on the summit, Allie, as you know, because we needed somebody to speak to travel, and your shop, Denver Divers, does a ton of travel, and you are very concerned about sustainable travel. So that's why you're here. So thank you for being here.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm excited to talk to you about it.
Well, here's the thing. I want people to understand that you're not just a partner at Denver Divers. You do other things, and I think they need to understand that your shop's been around for a while. It's not like you're a new kid on the block. And just give us some background.
Okay. Well, I guess our shop started in 1961. It was one of the first retail dive shops to start recreational scuba diving, and our family bought it in 2009 at the bottom of the recession. So we're relatively new ourselves, but the shop has been here for a long time. I've been teaching for about 10 years now, teaching scuba diving and then leading trips since about 2007. So I've seen a lot of different things out there in both positive and negative aspects for sustainability.
Right. Well, you're with us, and you're part of the leadership team for Blue the Dive. In fact, you are one of the founders.
Yes. Yeah. So Blue the Dive was kind of a concept that slowly evolved between Mickey, Vicky, myself, Steve Weaver, a bunch of people that we wanted to see more sustainability within our own industry. And for me, going to business school, I was privy to a lot of positive sustainability business practices, and seeing how an industry can change itself from the inside out, and really wanted to bring that concept to our scuba industry.
You're also the head of the Colorado Retailers Association, so you're doing a few things.
Yeah. Colorado Scuba Retailers Association. We have, I think, 10 or so shops that are involved, and we really want to work on cross-marketing, but recently have been wanting to do more promotion for sustainability and environmental conservation, since the ocean really is our number one stakeholder, and without it, we don't have a business. So that's why we've decided to kind of shift gears and focus on sustainable business practices for the industry.
Vicky and I had a chat a while back, and we were talking about the Blue Vision Summit, and you were there with us.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
I hear you are a very valuable member of the inland team, going to Capitol Hill and DC and talking to people. And can you just tell us, as a dive retailer, what was that experience like, and what did you say?
It was very enlightening, I guess I should say, experience. It was my first time in DC, first time being a citizen lobbyist. I really enjoyed learning from the other people in the group, but I also saw a huge need for more business and economics to go into the conversation, because money talks, especially in Washington. And so that's kind of what I started talking about after listening to our politicians, or I should say their aides, telling us about, what their bosses stood for, and how we could, sway their vote towards sustainability, and really understanding the whole economics behind environmental conservation is super important. And if they understand that we're actually looking at the ocean as an economic stakeholder rather than an intrinsic stakeholder, then it becomes something more tangible for them to understand, to protect. So
that was a huge takeaway for me, just doing this whole summit and then going up with you all for the Blue Vision Summit on Capitol Hill. That was, we truly have economic clout, but we don't as long as we're in competition and off in our little corners of the world. We don't have the clout. But we have to step up to the plate and not expect associations to do it. We need to do it as a much more concerted effort. And I know in Blue the Dive, that's one of the tenets of the statement, the pledge, the Blue the Dive pledge is to become more involved and get involved politically. Because as David Helvarg says at the Blue Vision Summit, the biggest problem we have is political will or the lack thereof.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and we need to create political will because it's not going to happen without it. So I appreciate you guys doing all that. And people don't realize how many dive industry people were up on the hill. Like 150. I mean, it was a schooling with dive industry people. So I want to move on to an area that's very dear to my heart. I know it's very dear to yours, and that is travel.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about your travel program because I know you have a really active one. And let's just can you give us an overview of what's going on in your travel program? How many trips a year? Where do you go? Average group size?
So when we took over the business, there really wasn't a travel program. I had tried. I had worked here prior to buying the business, but we've tried to build back up our travel program, and we do about 10 to 12 trips per year. And I try and do, it was 30%, 40%. I'm trying to put more and more ecotourism style trips on our docket. Obviously, not every diver is, wanting to stay in a hut on the beach with no regular amenities that they would get in a hotel. But so we have to balance, economics with those opportunities. But even with, the fancier hotels that are a little bit more luxurious, you can always put in something that could be, educational or voluntourism or just, a little bit more in the sustainability side of things. And so that's kind of what we've been doing. I really, really believe that you should be learning on every single trip you go on, whether or not it's just one thing that you learn, but you actually are getting something out of it as a diver, because then that creates more respect for the ocean and the environment when you go home. So a big aspect of ecotourism is not only the sustainable use of the land and the use of the water while you're there, but also supporting local chapters, supporting the local economy, but then also taking what you've learned and applying it to your everyday life. Because if you don't do that, then there's no real reason to do it in the first place. So
no, this makes total sense, and I think this is how we get more divers involved, is because when they get engaged through learning and having these new experiences, they're going to stick with you. And I'm sure you have a pretty good loyalty rate at your dive store because of what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. And it takes time for sure. I was just working on Cabo Pulmo. I'm sure you've heard of Cabo Pulmo. We started going there, my mom, my sister, and I went there in 2009 just to have a girls' trip before we really got into the swing of the dive shop, and loved it. And we tried a trip there, I think a year later, and we had maybe 8 people sign up. They were a little scared about this, tiny little town in the middle of Mexico. They weren't really sure what they were going to see. And now this year, I have 2 16-person trips going back to back because everybody loves it. They love the diving, they love the location, they love learning about what they've done. And it's become, not to take a page out of Sylvia Earle's book, but it's become a huge hope spot for Mexico, because they can take the sustainability plan that the local town put into place, and they can use that to go to other places that aren't doing as well, and hopefully teach each other how to protect their coastal environments. So it's really neat to see.
It's so exciting. This gives me huge hope when I see how local plans applied to international tourism can really change things around. And, using tourism as a tool for sustainability of that destination. It's just fantastic. So Cabo Pulmo is a big one. What other places? Just give us an idea of some of the.
Fiji has done a very, very good job. We go to Kondavu. That's one of our favorite local or ecotourism destinations. Matava Eco Resort has done a fantastic job on doing everything. I mean, there's lots of aspects of ecotourism that you can take bits and pieces from, or you can, embrace the whole thing. And they've done an amazing job. They have all people from the villages. They run the entire resort. All of the food comes from behind the resort. Like, you can go into the garden and pick your own vegetables and, just eat them right there. So very, very nice. And they've done a really good job working with the local villages on protection plans, and continuing to educate on what tourism can do for their village. So I think they've done a great job.
Yeah. I talked to Richard, and he said that they don't have seafood unless they can absolutely be guaranteed that it's sustainable. They don't just get it from the local fishermen unless they can absolutely be assured.
Yeah, which is huge. And people don't talk about that enough, seafood, because that's like a big, I think it really bothers me, the whole seafood thing. Like, you're going diving and you're going to look at the thing and then you go and eat it. And then you complain the next day because you can't see it again. Come on, let's put it together. You eat what you're trying to look at, then you're not going to see it. So I think that's huge, that people don't really talk about it too much.
Well, I'm just going to just do a sidetrack here. Here's the thing. In the tourism industry, we give people what they want, right? So
right.
we have set it up that travelers want to have fresh seafood on vacation. So we bend over backwards to make sure that we can give them what they want. So how do you handle travelers who all of a sudden may not be getting, shrimp on the barbie or whatever that they're used to? How do you deal with them?
So I try and do a lot of educational stuff in the shop before we leave. So we do a lot of educational events. We do monthly events that people can come, learn from. And every once in a while, I'll bring in a pretty hard-hitting seafood person or anti-seafood person, just so they can understand and learn. And we also do a monthly article in our newsletter. And I try and talk about seafood, every 2 to 3 months or so, utilize the Monterey Bay Aquarium thing, and then talk about, like, if you don't know where the seafood is coming from, then you shouldn't be eating it. Like, if you don't know that it's sustainably caught and it's, going to be, the animal is going to be able to be rejuvenated, then it's probably not beneficial for you to eat that animal. And I think using my own knowledge, I've just educated our tours, but using the dip pledge that Aubrey put together, I think that Audrey put together, I've been doing that all day. I think that it's really helpful. I put it in every single pre-trip packet. It's on my website. And I talk about, well, if you're in a local place and you know that it was caught that day and it was caught outside the marine park, or, it was just, it's something that's sustainable, then you can for sure eat it. But I've actually converted a lot of people away from seafood altogether, like altogether. So I think that's also, I don't know, those are my small wins. When somebody comes up to me like, I can't eat it anymore. I like seeing them underwater. And I'm like, I know, they're beautiful. They're beautiful alive.
Exactly. So. Well, this is one of the things that the leadership team came up with. It wasn't me, it was somebody else. I think it was you and Audrey and a few of you kind of put your heads together and came up with this thing called the dip, and it's do your part. And
that was Audrey. She put that together, and I think it's very powerful and easy to use, and it gives people tangible things to do now, in their everyday lives, but then also on their trips. So,
and it's on. I was just going to say it was on it's on bluethedive.org, and you can download it. Anybody can access the dip and hand it out to their customers to help them prepare for the the trip ahead. But we hope to have more of these kinds of tools at the Blue the Dive site. We're working a lot. I know you are working a lot with manufacturers, which we won't talk about right now, but we'll talk about them a little bit later. Can you give me some ideas of dive trips where you take them to take your customers to more, I don't know, upscale resorts and more established dive destinations, and how you help them be more sustainable by doing that kind of thing?
Okay. So we go to DV, or we go to Bonaire a lot. I actually keep going away from the big established places and get in trouble for it, which is probably not good. I don't have as many people sign up. But so Bonaire and Roatan and Belize have all been very popular destinations. Cayman has been a popular destination. We actually just had a group come back from Little Cayman, and they were staying at a really, really nice resort, but they've done a fabulous job on educating their consumers in ecotourism. And we actually set up a film night with one of the local scientists. So he came in and showed a film to the tourists, and they got some education there, and then got to talk to him about it afterwards. And then one of the people that's been working on lionfish extraction came and talked to them, and they were all just thrilled with that so much. And it's not something that, unless you have become a diver and actually followed stuff going on in the diving world, you don't know about the problem with lionfish in the Caribbean. Like, you just don't know about it. And so I think that's an easy one for people to kind of follow and learn. And then, I don't know, Bonaire and Roatan, I haven't quite worked too much there. DV just went through a full renovation. We're going there in August, so I'm going to see see what they did, and then kind of talk with them about that kind of stuff. Big hotels are hard.
Well, that's the thing. It's hard. There's not many big hotels that are really pushing the sustainability agenda, and that brings me to another point, which is how do you talk to people that you like who aren't pushing the sustainability agenda? Let's say you have a travel partner and you discover that they're really not stepping up the way you like, or you would like to, invest your dollars. Well, how do you talk to them?
I think it would be another economics thing. I mean, if I see that they're, not doing something very well, you need to put an economic number behind it, or monetary number behind it. So like those little bottles of shampoo that everybody gives to you, like if you can do a model where if you put big bottles that they can just pump shampoo out in the hotel room, then you can show that if you refill the bottles, this is how much money it's going to cost you, versus getting a little bottle printed and put into the hotel room and then not used. There's definitely an economic value there. So just talking to them about the little things, and then also talking to them about the fact that our tourists want that. So it's something that's being more demanded. And I think that definitely helps.
When you open the discussion with a new supplier, is that one of the top things that you talk to them about? Is sustainability? How do you broach the subject for someone you're just testing the waters with? What do you?
I usually ask them what their sustainability policy is, and just see what happens. See what they have to say to me, and then if they, are working towards something, then it sounds like they're actually wanting to function in a more sustainable environment. If they just don't have anything at all, then it might not be as beneficial for either. Yeah, it won't be beneficial for either one of us to go there. So
right,
that's kind of important.
I guess when you start walking your customers down the path, it's hard to deviate and then tell them, well, we're just going to do it just this once.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. When you get on it, then you start to look for those things, because you're trying to educate your customers, and you try not to deviate. And what happens if you get to a resort and you discover that a lot of things they said were actually kind of candy coating? They were greenwashing what they were actually doing. What do you do?
During the trip, I don't like to do a lot. Most of the time, the people that are in charge aren't there. So I can't, I can go up to the manager, who would then have to go to the owner, who would then have to go get approval from somebody else. So usually I'll take notes and then send an email when we get back and say, hey, these are the things that I saw. We're not super happy with XYZ. We're not super happy with the fact that you're serving me grouper every night. I would like to, discuss whether or not we're going to come back, privy to whether or not you're going to, step up your game, because this is the type of establishment we like to go to.
One of the things that I came across is a number of resorts who are established and do a great job, but they're at a destination that it in itself doesn't have the infrastructure.
Yeah.
It's really hard. So they say, it's really hard for us to be sustainable. So we try to recycle, but there's actually no recycling depot, and we try to do this, but there's actually not this. And how do you help them? Do you go back to them, or is there any advice you can give them, or?
So like on the recycling front, I feel like a lot of the conversations nowadays have gone away from the three pillars of recycling. I mean, it was reduce, reuse, and recycle. Reduce and reuse are gone. People don't talk about them. People don't think about it. And I think that's something that a destination can really, really use to their benefit if there's not an infrastructure in place. So, I keep going back to Fiji, but they're instead of giving you water bottles, they give you little cups that they reuse all the time, and you have your cup on the boat, and that's your cup. If in Palau, they gave us water bottles when we arrived at the resort, and they said, you have to use this water bottle the whole time. If you lose it, you have to buy one. Like, this is your water bottle. Use it, utilize it. You don't have to have recycling, because let's be honest, how much actually gets recycled all the time? And so I feel like those two things are something that they can really focus on, rather than focusing on the negative aspects of their country or the negative aspects of their infrastructure. They can focus on the things they can do positively. So, the whole water bottle thing, I think, is so silly, because you can easily, get fresh water in a big bucket and then have people refill in whatever container they're going to drink from. And I think that's totally easy to do. You tell people to bring their own shampoo to the resort. They don't need to be, relying on you to give them tiny bottles of stuff that they're going to throw away anyways.
These are all kind of like sort of cultural mores and habits, and we do need to break away from this. I think we should stop giving people what they want and show them something better.
Right.
But
right.
I think everybody's afraid to test the waters, because the word will get out. Well, they don't even give you those little shampoo bottles. They like to take home as souvenirs.
Yeah, which is so silly. Like, why? What do you do with them when you get home? Like, you probably open a drawer, stick it in there, and then never look at it again. Why don't you take a photo of the beautiful resort as your souvenir? Yeah, I definitely think that, and it's Western norms. It's not like the people in Fiji, want to give you little bottles. They're only giving them to you because you want them. And so I think if you go to a village in any place that we travel to, in the remote places, they live off the land. They do a ton of reuse. They reuse everything, and it's really beneficial for them. So instead of us imposing our values on them, they should be imposing their values on us, which in turn is also a huge educational process for somebody. Your life is changed when you go somewhere and you see the way other people live, and you respect their community and you respect their life. It gives you, I feel like it opens your eyes to what else is out there rather than living in a bubble in Colorado.
I've been reading a lot about innovation, and I just keep coming across this whole concept of, and it's not a new concept, but it's just basically we cannot rely on our customers to inspire us with innovation. Because if we did, we would just have bigger horse-drawn carriages.
Yeah.
And that we only should rely on our customers for customer feedback as to how we did.
Right.
But we should not be relying on them for moving forward and doing things differently. And I think this is it's a simple concept, but I think that we've gotten stuck in listening to everything our customer says and just doing the same old, without really considering that it's by giving people what they want. That we're actually kicking ourselves, and it's just not working anymore.
Yeah.
So it's important to listen to your customer, but not when it comes to doing new things. And you must have a few early adopters in your customer base for you to be able to go out to Cabo Pulmo and when it was an untried, untested area. And you must rely on that group, the leading edge of innovation. There's customers in at every business that are on the leading edge, and if you only get 8, and so that's your group is half full. If you only get those 8, it's really an investment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In being able to fill it for the future, because these people are going to come back and say, hey, we did this completely out of the box thing.
Yeah.
We weren't expecting it, but you got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they become your next adopter. Well, your promo people, and they help adopt the next people in the curve.
Yeah, for sure. And they've definitely become our repeat customers. The people that go on the off the wall trips that I put together usually are our repeat customers, and they love it. They love the different places. They love that I, seek out the liveaboard that's going to be a little bit more off the beaten path, and that they get to see more and they learn more and they have a fabulous experience. I think that's really, really important for sure.
What's the most off the wall thing that you've done in business?
Well, Cabo Pulmo was for sure, now it's not. I mean, everybody knows what Cabo Pulmo is now. When we went, I was trying to convince my mom that it was going to be a fun trip to go on. We went in 2009 for the first time, and the only reason we went is one of our customers owns a condo down there with 10 other people, and she's like, we love going down there, you're going to love it. And we had to look it up on a map, we had no idea where it was. So I was definitely off the wall. I would say in Indonesia, there are a ton of liveaboards and there are a ton of very well-established names, but they also charge, for their name and for their luxury. And last year, we put together a trip that was on a smaller, lesser-known liveaboard, and the owner of the boat is so dedicated to conservation and seeing new places that he literally took a GPS out on our little dinghy from the liveaboard to the middle of the ocean. He said, I think it's here. Let's try this dive. And our group fell in love with it. So we've rebooked the trip, and I can't advertise the trip because everybody's re-signing up. It did that well, but it was a total risk because nobody knew where we were going. We did a tour, an itinerary that nobody does. None of the other liveaboards do. So it was a very off the beaten path itinerary. And I mean, there was a couple times where he was like, well, no one's really done this dive site, so just come down and follow us. I'm sure we'll have a good dive. And it was. I mean, they were fabulous, fabulous dives. And we learned so much about the local cultures, because I think there were more crew on the boat than passengers, so we got to know them very well. It was really fun talking to them. And of course, we've rebooked with him because we need to see more. Where else is he going to take me?
So I want to know how you find these places. How do you do your research?
He had a good website, to be honest. So I do a lot of looking at their websites and seeing what what sustainability models they have posted on their websites, but then also if they're actually talking about it intelligently. Not that I'm like agreeing some of the chain hotels where they're like, we're a green establishment, we want you to sustainability. And then you're like, I'm going to put my towel on the rack, please don't take it away. And then you have all new linens the next morning. So they're really not following any sustainability at all, but like actually seeing if they talk about it and say who's employed with the company, where they're getting their food, how they run their operation, what type of inclusions are on the boat. So like if they're including, tours of the local islands versus like, native dances. Not really my thing. That's not really an educational thing. So definitely looking at the different types of things that the tour operator is offering, I think is really important.
Right. I want to go on one of your trips, Sally. It sounds like a total blast.
Yes, they're a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, this is really. I think this is really helpful for everybody to hear that this is possible. That it takes a little bit of research. Do you have your trips posted on your website so that people can do some covert investigation to see who you are using for your trips, and give them an idea of the kinds of things that you include and what people are attracted to. And after you've done a little bit of education with your customer, I guess there's always a little bit of a ramping up, right?
Yeah, definitely a little bit of ramping up. And I mean, you can look at the more well-established places that have done well, and then move into the lesser known destinations.
You sell a lot of gear, I bet, because you do a lot of travel. I imagine you put a lot of gear through. So let's go and talk about that. Graham Cousin was on earlier talking about sustainable supply chain management, and I know that you specifically have been in touch with some manufacturers. What's the dialogue there about?
So yeah, we get shut down pretty quick. Meaning that they have their own green business practices that they're supposedly following, but there's not a whole lot of customer-facing values or customer-facing things that are going on. And so I've been slowly asking them to show us, like, if you are doing this, what are you doing? Because I don't see it. So if I'm your customer and I'm asking for this, why aren't I seeing it? Like one of the companies, I'm not going to talk about the different companies, but one of the companies told me abroad that they were huge in sustainability and they're working on all these things, but everything comes in, like the masks and snorkels bother me the most, because the mask comes in to the shop in a box, like a cardboard box wrapped in either peanuts or plastic, sometimes paper, which is a little bit better, but then it's inside of a plastic box, which is inside of a plastic, and then the mask is inside of a plastic bag. So it comes in like 20 layers to the customer, and the snorkel is the same thing, the box, the packaging, and then in a plastic bag. Like, why do you need a snorkel in a plastic bag? So there's these little things that our consumerism has driven packaging. Our consumerism has driven the packaging industry, and it's a huge industry. But people want their things to come out of new packaging. That's something that our culture has driven. And so I think that's where the manufacturers are trying to figure out, well, what packaging is sustainable versus what's going to look nice. Because you can always do a brown paper bag, but it's not going to look as nice as a pretty, whatever they called, the clamshell package, where it's like right there. And it's hard to talk about it because most of the manufacturers do their manufacturing abroad. And so it comes in fully packaged to them. So they would just be throwing the bags away at their facilities if I asked them to take the bags off. I'm not really doing anything to get rid of it. So I think the scuba industry ourselves, we can start working on the stateside manufacturing. And then once each company gets an idea of the best practices, then they can go together, because most of them work with, the same 5 people in China to manufacture their masks, go together on improving sustainability abroad, because that's also another huge cultural shift.
Yes. But I know I've been talking to people who are reps for a variety of manufacturers, and they go into dive stores that have, sell a lot of gear, because these people are all traveling. And I asked them, okay, so what are the manufacturers doing for sustainability? And they're just like, squat. Yeah. I mean, they're all kind of off away, from the mainstream industry, and yet they're pivotal to our industry. And we need to start putting pressure on them. But as consumers can't really put the pressure. It's the dive stores that need to.
Mm-hmm.
And so your plan for Blue the Dive with the manufacturers is hopefully to get some of the dive stores together to help drive this change.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, one of our reps put the idea out there that we should do a pledge of sorts that say the X number of dive stores want to see this change, and then the reps will have something to hand to the manufacturer. So that's our next step once we get past everything else going on. I think the next step would be to do a pledge or a request. I mean, we don't want to call it a petition, but a request to the manufacturers from the dive stores saying, we would like to see these business practices put into place in the next 3 years. This is what we're asking for. And if you get enough dive stores to sign on, then the reps will actually have clout to take to the manufacturer itself or to their bosses and say, hey, 30 of my dive stores want to see this change happen. Is there any way we can make it happen? I mean, that's how we get color in the industry, for goodness sake. When I started 10 years ago, it was blue and yellow, and black. Blue, yellow, and black.
Now we have a little bit more of a field to choose from.
Yes.
So what you're saying, when you look back at the days of old, the manufacturers really drove the industry, and they told dive stores what they were going to buy from them. Mm-hmm. And now it's a sea change. It's literally everything is being flipped, and dive stores are rallying, collaborating. Yeah, and saying, listen, you need to start doing this. This is going to be a very interesting little bit of a chaotic time. It's going to be kind of it's actually going to be quite interesting to see how this all shakes down. But a lot of our business models are being flipped on their head. Certification agencies are our suppliers, and manufacturers are suppliers, and as our travel resorts and that kind of thing, they're suppliers to dive stores. And you are a perfect example of somebody who is showing your economic clout and going back to these suppliers and saying, listen, wasn't happy with our experience. You said you were doing this in terms of sustainability, and it didn't actually translate at the resort. Mm-hmm. and with the manufacturers as well, and now working with the reps to get them to start being part of the voice for change. It's really it's a really interesting time to be in the dive industry.
It is.
Yeah.
It's fun though. I really like it. I like seeing the change. I like being a part of it, obviously. But I think there's a lot that can be done, and I think we have a lot of positive people working within the industry towards sustainability and conservation. And everybody talks about the charismatic creatures, and everybody talks about the saving the reefs and saving the actual part that we're, the actual environment that we dive in. But there's also the land side, the things that we need to start doing in our everyday lives that we don't really talk as much about. And I think it's, you said it was like a whole sea change where we need to see, not only the ocean protection part, but the, just changing the way we live our lives and in sustainability and, not using plastic bottles all the time and not driving our cars everywhere and just, living the life that you want to live for the ocean.
Allie, how do you bring this up at your monthly events? How do you, and your articles? Do you talk about daily life and how our daily lives are impacting? How do you educate your customers on the issues?
We usually will pick a topic and then talk about it. So like last month we showed Sand Wars. I don't know, have you ever heard of it? It's a fascinating documentary. It was produced by a French documentary producer, and it talks about one of the commodities that we all think we have plenty of, that we don't. And the things that we do because we love the ocean are actually driving sand to go away, and it's completely changing ecosystems around the world. Building houses too close to the shoreline causes erosion, and then you lose your house, but you also lose the sand because it gets swept back into the ocean or whatnot. Using sand for manufacturing, there's a whole black market for ocean sand out there, which is crazy to me. I had never even heard of this, and a customer came up to me and said, "Hey, I think you should watch this." And so we put it together. We, put it on our Facebook page and told people about it. I have 50 people here wanting to learn about sand. And I think it changed a lot of the way people think about, their vacation. Obviously, we're not going to build homes on the beach, but thinking about their vacation homes and thinking about how much sand goes into electronics and, where we're going to vacation. I mean, there's a huge black market for the sand out there. And the fact that these nations are building, did you know people are building islands in the middle of the ocean so that they can increase their zone of water rights, which is crazy to me. And so that was very interesting. People really, really were excited to learn about that. But we always pick a topic that we think will be controversial but interesting to talk about. I mean, we did Blackfish. I'm pretty sure everybody's done Blackfish, and that was very interesting to talk to everybody about. And there are two sides of the coin on everything. So that one was very enlightening to hear, well, how are we going to see these animals if they're not? And I'm like, well, you probably could spend the same amount of money that you would to go to SeaWorld to go to California and actually go see, dolphins and humpback whales. So we try and pick interesting topics for people to learn from. We usually do a fun cooking demo where we, do sustainable foods in the cooking demo. So, and that one's always fun because then you actually open the conversation up. But all kinds of things. I'm not a chef. I'm a vegetarian, so I'm usually not in the loop in the practice or in the planning for it. But they usually will pick, local fishes. So catfish is huge in Colorado, but things that are local. I mean, it's silly to me that people think they can get bluefin tuna here and think it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. This brings me to a really important part of our summit, and that is how we can speak positively and proactively about all these issues. And one of the things that strikes me about what you just said is that we used to use our dive store as it was a social club, right? Mm-hmm. And we've lost that in so many different dive stores. It's a place to window shop, and then you go and buy it online. And what you're doing with your shop, and I know there's other shops doing this, is creating an event, and it's around an issue, and people get together and get to chat and get to know each other. And this only helps you with your business and also helps you in promoting more sustainable trips. It all works.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think that it still should be a social club. I mean, people dive together. Most of the people that come in here are by themselves getting certified. They're terrified. They're gonna maybe meet up with somebody to go diving somewhere, but they want that social aspect. So if you can build something in that is educational at the same time, then they are left wanting more. Basically, I was fascinated with the amount of people that came to Sandboards last month, just because we literally promoted it for like 3 weeks. It was so last minute, and so many people came. But I think that keeping that social aspect in the store is huge. And you get to talk to, other travelers are there. They'll talk to one another about the trips, and then they're like, oh, well, why don't we sign up together? Let's go together to, Cabo Fulmo or whatnot.
Yeah, so, and then they sell it themselves.
Yeah, exactly. It's the best part.
It's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. But it's also a good way to get like fun personalities on the trip too.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's really important that people meet each other before they leave to go somewhere.
You're doing such an amazing job, and especially at a time when there's quite a few dive stores that are hurting, and you're doing a really great job and giving some really helpful ideas to people who are listening, who are running their own stores, and maybe injecting just a bit of inspiration. I'm sure you are. And getting people to look at their businesses differently. You've had the value of going to business school fairly recently, where they started to teach sustainability. Mm-hmm. And many people, I went through business school back in the 90s, and they were talking about ethics, and sustainability was not even on the radar.
Really? Wow.
Nothing.
Now it's part of every business class. The environmental ethics of business is a huge, huge thing. And I think we can all take a page from the industries that have done well. One thing I always go back to is the commercial carpet industry is one of the most sustainable industries out there. And it was all because of the guy that started, I think it's Flor, F-L-O-R. He was like, why are we wasting so much? Like, we need to be a zero waste facility. And he became one, and that became the keystone for the commercial carpet industry, which is so weird and so random, but they've done a really good job with it. And I think that's an easy page to take from. There's a lot of amazing industries out there, and I think that we can all work towards it together.
And this is the thing, that sustainability goes to the bottom line. The as they call it, the low-hanging fruit. When Jean-Michel was on, he was talking about how the dive operation that he works with in the Caribbean, they took water bottles out of the resort, and they saved $80,000 a year.
Holy cow!
Yeah, just
that's awesome.
Like that. Real results. From doing that, and so we can't be looking to our customers' existing needs to create the future. We have to create demand for the new thing, and that's what you're doing in your center in Denver. Yay! All this stuff goes on in Colorado. It's just so wonderful. I'm so glad that we have the whole contingent from Colorado on our summit, and I want to thank you, Ali, for all your great info. I really appreciate it. And and we're going to be continuing to work together after the summit is over to work on Blue the Dive and a few other things we've got bubbling in the background.
Just a little.
That's great.
Summit.
Yeah. Well, listen, you take care, my dear, and thanks to everybody for watching this, and we've got more summit stuff coming up.
All right. Thank you. Bye.